Welcome to Our Justice Journey, a podcast designed to educate others on how to fight for social justice as youth and beyond. Today we'll be interviewing social justice warrior Karega Bailey. Karega Bailey is an angel parent, a social emotional healing practitioner, and an award-winning educator and recording artist. He is a nationally renowned peace advocate and the founding dean of culture of Roses in Concrete Community School in Oakland, California. He's the author of Soul Affirmations and co-founder and lead facilitator for Be Imaginative, a transformative safe space led by a collective of artists and activists dedicated to disrupting gun violence and healing Black and Brown communities through innovative multidimensional storytelling. In today's podcast, Karega Bailey will speak to us about the importance of healing, love, and safe spaces in order to move towards justice. We are beyond grateful to have him here today to share his knowledge and everything he's learned while doing this work. So our first question for you is, why did you decide to write your book, Soul Affirmations, and what do you think the importance of affirmations are?
Like led me to writing soul affirmations was my intersection with loss,
Mm,
with pain, and ultimately wanting and deeply believing that that wasn't the last stop on the train for me, that
mm,
my pain wasn't the last place I was supposed to be left because of what has happened to me. So, soul affirmations actually comes from me writing another book. And in the middle of writing that book, I had to ask myself some essential questions around how did I get here? What is forgiveness? So, in the middle of writing a different text, I asked myself some questions so that I can more authentically um, write from a true place.
mhm,
And that writing caused me to go back to my journal because I wanted to see if there was any transformation that occurred in me that I could see on page. Because sometimes our journals leaves evidence of different thinking or different habits of mind.
yeah.
And when I went to my journal, um, it was just very profound. So Felicia and I then synthesized those journal entries
Mhm,
and produced soul affirmations, a more condensed form of what I was learning, of what I was emoting, of what I was finding. So soul affirmation actually comes to us because I dared to write another text that I have not yet completed, um, but it's still a work in progress. It just required me to go that deep within.
Interesting. Wow, I mean, to think like you didn't set out to write, like, because I've read part of it, you know what I mean? And just to
Mhm.
think you didn't even set out to write it, but it's just like, I don't know, like your reminders to yourself. I just think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I would dare to say they wrote me, then I wrote them.
mm, and to that point, what do you think the importance of everyday affirmations are, and like how do they affect us
Yeah.
in our lives?
Well, I talk about affirmations in this way. Um, Affirmations aren't new information. Affirmations are things that are true that we may forget when the waters get deep.
Mm,
So I think of it like this: a diet. Let's just say you are in the middle of working on a new episode,
mhm,
um, or editing, or some productive task that you enjoy, but it requires um, a lot of your mental faculties, right? So you're going to give everything you can. Well, if you've ever experienced working on a project where you may have forgotten to eat, or
mhm,
might have been working on schoolwork so long you forgot to eat. What was fascinating to me is that we know that eating is essential
mhm,
to our nutrition, to our survival for fuel,
mhm,
and somehow we can still forget to do it. Now, if we can forget to do something as necessary to our function and our existence as eating,
mhm,
what else might we forget when the waters get deep? What types of things might we have to train ourselves to remember? Right? How do we remember certain truths? How do we remember certain things about our values? How do we remember the wisdom that has come to us from past lived experiences?
mhm,
But I think that sometimes in the presence of anger, in the presence of anxiety, in the presence of stress, in the presence of just not knowing, we can sometimes forget very important truths that
mhm,
we have to train ourselves to remember, right?
mhm,
And then ultimately it leads to our being able to love more abundantly, or being able to have more room for love,
mhm,
when we can remember that when we are experiencing a difference with a person, difference doesn't mean deficit, right? Just because someone sees something different from us doesn't make it a deficit. um, So how do we train ourselves to, I guess you could say, interrogate
Mhm.
thoughts, ideas, and philosophies,
Mm.
and not so much people,
Mhm.
right? And that doesn't mean there isn't philosophies and practices that are harmful to other people.
Mhm.
But I mean, in a general sense, that when we have a disagreement with someone who isn't trying to harm us, it doesn't mean that their way is a deficit. So just training yourself to really, make room for understanding.
Yes.
So everyday affirmations are just, I think they're just important to our everyday functioning.
Mhm.
Um, if I could just be very honest with you, yesterday I woke up to a text message from someone that I did not expect, with messaging that I did not expect.
Mhm.
And it took me quite a while to work through those emotions. I was in the car and I plugged up my phone to listen to um, a rough mix of something that I was in the studio recording 2 days ago,
Mhm.
right? But instead of that rough mix playing, Soul Affirmation started playing because I guess it was the last thing I had playing on my phone.
Mhm.
I so needed that. I even authored it and recorded it, but I wasn't practicing telling myself that in the moment. I
Mhm.
think my emotions were in the way and I wasn't affirming myself. I was instead responding to the stimuli, right? The text message that got me,
Yeah.
didn't really get me angry. I think it kind of hurt my feelings, to keep it a buck, right? Like that's what happened. And so I didn't reach for my affirmation. I didn't reach for my scripture. I tried to work through it. But working through it, a lot of other thoughts started to roll through my mind.
Yeah.
And when Soul Affirmations was on, it just started to like seriously like started to like resituate my emotions, my
Mhm.
thinking, and help me remember what power I had in the situation.
Mm. That's deep. I think, like, from your point, I think affirmations can remind us who we are,
Hmm.
just at the
Hmm.
center of ourself that we sometimes forget.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then my next question is, this also goes to your book, in many of your affirmations in your book, you speak of the power of love. One quote that particularly stuck with me was, "Love as a philosophy is much easier than love as a practice. When we choose to practice love, it will challenge our philosophy and change the way we respond to what challenges us. Today, I choose to practice love." So, do you think that the revolution is truly a practice of love? And if so, can you elaborate on that idea?
Oh, you went in. You picked the one. Oh my gosh. Uh I think I'm just tripping that you chose that one. That particular affirmation is so loaded. And I always have to come back to it just to make sure I am fully with all the layers
Mhm.
that's described in that affirmation. Is the revolution the practice of love? I think the greatest revolution is that of love, right? I think that there is a war going on in the hearts and the minds of mankind,
Mhm.
um, to which some folks just can't surrender to the frequency of love. It's so large, it's so massive, and respectfully, it can be scary. It's surrendering everything you think you know.
Mhm.
It's surrendering your power. It's surrendering your agency to something much larger than you, and that can scare people because it makes them feel like they are losing control,
Mhm.
right? Um, but I would certainly lose control to gain love, right? I think that there are ideas around control, ideas around, I guess, free will, but
Mhm.
people don't include love as this free will in some philosophies, right? When it's in fact it's the freest of the will. It's the most expansive force we have in this world. But I think it requires us to take inventory over the things that are occupying love's territory
Mhm.
and have the courage and wisdom to let those things go.
Mhm.
But for some people, letting go of those things might mean they think they're letting go of their privilege. They might think they're letting go of their positionality.
Mhm.
And love doesn't seem to be as rewarding as the here and now,
Mhm.
right? So some people may choose to um, take the here and now
Mhm.
and whatever privileges their positionality afford them. Sometimes they take that over love, right? Because insofar as they can see all their needs are met, everyone in their zip code is fine, everyone in their neighborhood is fine, their family is fine. but there's a world outside our windows much larger than our zip code,
Yeah.
right? And that's the revolution we're talking about. I do believe the revolution is one that of love. I think we can do all we want to change policy,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't change the hearts and mind of mankind, right? That's a very uh, sacred work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I'm less concerned around making someone, like, I'm less concerned with trying to create these diversity training models,
Mm-hmm.
right? For people whose hearts just won't be open.
Yeah.
Like, we can do all we want on their heads, but it's their heart to choose love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a mighty work that we are all ascribed to. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think the true revolution is love. But I understand the inhibitors of why people aren't choosing love. Um, yeah, and love as a philosophy is much easier than love as a practice,
Mm-hmm.
right? I actually learned that from my years in the classroom, right? How do I love what challenges me was the question I arrived at when experiencing students who, let's just say, someone before me may have made a diagnosis, may have called their opposition clinical.
Mm-hmm.
And the simple asking of a question in the classroom can trigger someone's opposition, the defiance. But that's not really happening because they want to trigger you. It's that because they're looking for trust, they're looking for relationships, right? And once young people feel safe in a learning space, the learning is apparent, right? But it's about, do you show up for me? Do you create safety for me? Do
Mm-hmm.
you see me, all of me, not just the parts of me you want to perform well in your class for the next 50 minutes?
Yeah.
Can you handle all of me?
Yeah.
And when I learned to ask myself that question, how do I love what challenges me? It made me a better educator. It made me a better person. Um, it made me a better partner, better husband. Um, yeah,
I love that answer. Um,
I love that question.
we have to how I think about it is like the revolution. I mean, I think it's all just fighting for love of humanity and just love of each other and just
hmm
yeah.
hmm It's love. Love is what we after, yo. There's nothing else. Nothing else could do it. Nothing else could do it.
We thank you for listening to part one of our Justice Journey with Karega Bailey. To further listen to this discussion, feel free to visit part two.